My name is Rebecca Wilson, a 35-year-old real estate agent from Chicago. 3 years ago, my grandmother left me her cherished lakeside vacation home. Little did I know my sisters Amanda and Melissa had secretly listed it on rental platforms, pocketing over $3,000 monthly for 8 months. When I discovered their scheme and demanded they stop, they refused to return a single penny of the $24,000 they'd made. After I changed the locks, their husbands Christopher and Tyler broke in. Now they're facing criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. If you've ever had family betray your trust for financial gain, subscribe to hear how I fought back and won. Before I dive into this painful story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe families should respect boundaries, and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when others cross the line. Trust me, what happened next will show you exactly why setting boundaries matters, even with the people closest to you. I've spent the past 12 years building my career in Chicago's competitive real estate market. Starting as an assistant at a boutique agency, I worked my way up through determination and countless late nights. Now I run my own successful team specializing in luxury properties along Lake Michigan. My grandmother Patricia watched my career journey with pride, often telling me I inherited her business sense. Patricia was my rock growing up. When my parents divorced during my teen years, I spent summers at her lakefront cottage, finding peace in the rhythmic waves and peaceful surroundings. Those summers shaped me, teaching me responsibility as I helped with maintenance and gardening. Unlike my sisters, I cherished those quiet moments with Grandma Patricia, listening to her stories about building her own business in a time when women rarely ventured into entrepreneurship. When she passed away 3 years ago, I was heartbroken but not surprised that she left me her cherished property. The 3-bedroom cottage sits on 2 acres of lakefront land, about 90 minutes from Chicago. Built in the 1960s, it features original hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, and panoramic windows overlooking the water. After inheriting it, I invested nearly $50,000 in necessary updates, replacing the roof, modernizing the kitchen, and adding a wraparound deck where I often sit with morning coffee, watching boats drift by. My sisters had very different reactions to the inheritance. Amanda, 37, immediately questioned the fairness of Grandma's decision. With her husband Christopher and their 2 children, she lives in an expensive suburb despite their constantly strained finances. 5 years ago, Amanda launched a boutique clothing store that failed within 18 months. She called me in tears when creditors came knocking, and I loaned her $15,000 to settle debts, money she promised to repay, but never mentioned again. Melissa, my 33-year-old sister, lives with her husband Tyler and their son in a recently purchased home they clearly couldn't afford. She works part-time at a dental office, but constantly posts Instagram photos showcasing expensive restaurant meals, designer purchases, and luxury vacations. Whenever I questioned how they managed these expenses on their modest income, Melissa would vaguely mention Tyler's investments or change the subject entirely. Both sisters established a pattern of financial irresponsibility that affected our relationship over the years. When Amanda's daughter needed braces, she called asking if I could help out family with the $3,000 expense. Melissa once asked me to co-sign a loan for a new SUV after their previous vehicle was repossessed. I declined both requests, trying to establish boundaries while suggesting financial counseling. These refusals created tension, with comments about my selfishness despite my big real estate commissions. Our parents unfortunately enabled this behavior. Mom would call suggesting I help your sisters out because I was doing so well, while Dad would remind me that family takes care of family. Neither acknowledged the pattern developing or respected my right to set financial boundaries. The lake house became my sanctuary away from these dynamics. I typically visited monthly for weekend getaways and occasionally brought trusted friends or clients for special gatherings. During winter months, when visits were less frequent, I hired a local maintenance service for regular checks. I deliberately kept my sisters' access limited, not providing them keys or security codes, based on past experiences of them borrowing things without permission. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs sooner. Strange Amazon packages began arriving, decorative pillows, kitchen gadgets, and bathroom accessories I never ordered. My quarterly maintenance bills included notes about cleaning up after weekend guests when I hadn't visited. During one winter inspection, I noticed unusual wear on furniture and different brand toiletries in the bathrooms. The most obvious clue came from Gregory, my 70-year-old neighbor who'd lived next door for decades. During a brief chat while I was raking leaves, he mentioned, "Your renters last weekend seemed nice," but I brushed it off, assuming he'd confused me with another property owner. The utility bills also showed suspicious patterns, electric usage spikes on weekends I wasn't there, and water consumption far exceeding what monthly maintenance should require. I initially attributed these oddities to contractor mistakes or utility rate increases. The security cameras I'd installed sent notifications I rarely checked thoroughly, dismissing them as maintenance visits or wildlife triggers. When the property tax assessment increased, I grumbled about paying more but never connected these scattered puzzle pieces forming around me. My focus remained on my thriving business, managing a team of 5 agents and closing record sales. The lake house remained my private retreat, its expenses justified by the priceless mental health benefits it provided. I never imagined that while I worked 60-hour weeks building my business, my own sisters were secretly profiting from my property behind my back. The revelation came on a Friday evening in April when my phone rang while I was preparing for a relaxing weekend at home. Gregory's voice sounded concerned as he explained, "Rebecca, I thought you should know there's quite a party happening at your place. At least 20 people, loud music, and they've been grilling on your deck since noon." "That's impossible," I replied, closing my laptop and moving toward my keys. "Nobody should be there." "Are you sure it's my house?" "Positive," Gregory confirmed. "The blue cottage with the new deck. There are 4 cars in the driveway, and they've got tiki torches set up all over your lawn." I immediately checked my security app, finding it had been disconnected. "I'm heading there now. If things get out of hand before I arrive, please call the police." The 90-minute drive felt eternal as scenarios raced through my mind: squatters, an Airbnb mix-up, or perhaps a maintenance service error. What I found was far worse. Pulling into the driveway, I encountered unfamiliar vehicles and could hear music and laughter from the backyard. Walking around the house, I found a group of strangers lounging on my deck, drinking beer around a fire pit I'd never purchased. "Excuse me," I announced, causing conversations to halt. "This is private property. Who are you people and why are you here?" A confused man stepped forward. "We rented this place for the weekend. Paid $750 through lakevacations.com. He showed me his phone with a booking confirmation featuring photos of my property, listed as charming lakefront retreat, perfect family getaway. There must be a mistake. I never listed this property for rent," I explained, taking photos of his booking details. "I'm the owner, and I need everyone to leave immediately." After a tense half-hour of collecting contact information and watching them pack up, I began investigating. The listing existed on 3 different platforms: Airbnb, VRBO, and a local vacation rental site. Each featured professional-looking photos of my property, many showcasing furniture pieces and decorations I didn't recognize. The booking calendar revealed a systematic pattern. Nearly every weekend for 8 months had been rented, with rates varying from $600 for regular weekends to $1,200 for holidays. A conservative calculation showed earnings exceeding $24,000. Each listing described Rebecca's lakeside retreat and provided detailed property information only family members would know, including historical tidbits about my grandmother I'd shared exclusively with my sisters. My stomach knotted when I spotted the contact information, my email address slightly altered, Rebecca instead of Rebecca Wilson, and a phone number I didn't recognize. Reviews mentioned Rebecca's wonderful hospitality and excellent communication, describing welcome baskets I never provided and check-in instructions I never wrote. With shaking hands, I called Amanda. Her casual, "Hey sis, what's up?" struck me as particularly offensive given what I discovered. "Why don't you tell me what's up with renting out my lake house behind my back?" I demanded. A pause, then, "Oh, that. Listen, Becca, the place was sitting empty most weekends. It just made financial sense. Financial sense for whom? You've been collecting money using my property without permission for months. Don't be dramatic, Amanda replied dismissively. We've actually improved the place. Notice the new fire pit and outdoor furniture? Those came from the rental income. I want both you and Melissa at my apartment tomorrow at noon. This conversation isn't happening over the phone. The next day, both sisters arrived looking defensive rather than remorseful. Melissa immediately launched into justification. Before you overreact, you should thank us for putting your property to good use. That house sits empty 70% of the time. Overreact? You've committed fraud using my name and property, I countered, showing printouts of the listings. We've actually done you a favor, Amanda insisted. The rental income covered the new mattresses, kitchenware, and linens we purchased. The place looks better than ever. So, you kept all the money, I clarified. What about the taxes I'll owe on this income? Or the commercial insurance required for rentals that I don't have? Or the local regulations about vacation rentals you've ignored? Melissa rolled her eyes. Nobody checks those things for occasional rentals. 8 months of weekend rentals isn't occasional. This is systematic fraud using my property and identity. You're being selfish, Amanda snapped. While you're living in your luxury condo closing million-dollar deals, we're struggling with everyday expenses. Christopher's hours got cut back, and Tyler's commission-only job barely covers their mortgage. So, you committed fraud instead of asking for help or finding legitimate income sources? Would you have said yes if we asked to rent out your precious lake house? Melissa countered. That's beside the point. This isn't about the house. It's about betrayal. You used my property without permission, pretended to be me, exposed me to liability, and pocketed thousands that rightfully belonged to me. It's just business, Amanda said, examining her nails. You should understand that better than anyone. Fraud isn't business. Identity theft isn't business. We're family, Melissa insisted, as if that explained everything. The house is technically yours, but Grandma would have wanted us all to benefit from it. Don't bring Grandma into your justification. She specifically left it to me because she knew I would respect and care for it, not exploit it behind someone's back. Their complete lack of remorse stunned me. They spoke about missed opportunity costs and how they'd managed the property better than I had. When I asked about the security system disconnection, Amanda shrugged. Renters don't like being watched. They suggested I should be grateful they'd discovered a revenue stream for the property. Neither acknowledged the violation of trust or legal implications. Instead, they presented themselves as savvy entrepreneurs who'd done me a favor while helping themselves to much-needed cash. The rental stopped today, I stated firmly. Remove all listings immediately and forward me every penny earned from my property. Their expressions hardened. Amanda leaned forward, speaking slowly. Here's our counteroffer. We'll make this legitimate. Melissa and I will officially manage the property rentals for a 70% commission, handling all bookings and cleaning. Are you serious right now? 70% for defrauding me? This meeting is over. Take down those listings today, or my next call is to the police and my attorney. As they left, Melissa turned back. You'll regret making this a legal issue, Rebecca. Families should handle things privately. Alone in my apartment, the magnitude of their betrayal overwhelmed me. This wasn't a misunderstanding or even a one-time lapse in judgment. This was calculated, sustained deception by the people who should have been most trustworthy in my life. I felt violated not just as a property owner, but as a sister who believed family meant something sacred. The days following my discovery became a chess match of demands and countermoves. I sent both sisters a detailed text outlining my non-negotiable terms, immediately remove all rental listings, provide complete financial records of transactions, return every dollar earned, and issue a formal written apology acknowledging the wrongdoing. Their response was a group text suggesting I was blowing things out of proportion and reiterating their offer to officially manage rentals for what they now called a reasonable 70% commission. That's an absolutely ridiculous proposal, I replied. The standard property management fee is 10 to 15%. You're suggesting I reward your dishonesty with an exorbitant commission. We've built up the rental business with perfect 5-star ratings, Amanda texted back. That reputation has value. Plus, we've invested in upgrading the property. Upgrades? I never authorized using money that wasn't yours to spend, I countered. The conflict escalated when our parents invited everyone for Sunday dinner, clearly attempting to mediate. Mom set out her best china and prepared everyone's favorites, as if comfort food could solve criminal behavior. Dad poured wine liberally, his standard approach to difficult conversations. I understand everyone's upset, Mom began after we'd taken our seats, but surely we can find a family solution here. There's nothing to solve, I said firmly. They used my property without permission and need to return the money. Dad cleared his throat. Rebecca, sweetheart, your grandmother would have wanted you girls to share. Maybe this is an opportunity to create a family sharing arrangement with the lake house. This isn't about sharing, I explained, feeling my patience wane. This is about theft and fraud. Such dramatic terms, Melissa interjected. We simply utilized an underused asset. That doesn't belong to you, I finished. But we're family, Amanda emphasized, looking to our parents for support. Rebecca has always been fortunate financially while we've struggled. This felt like evening things out a bit. Mom nodded sympathetically while Dad suggested, perhaps Rebecca could formalize the arrangement but adjust the commission structure. Keep it in the family rather than involving outsiders. I stared incredulously. Are you seriously suggesting I reward their behavior? They committed identity theft using my name and information. That's taking it too far, Dad frowned. They used a variation of your email, not your social security number. They presented themselves as me to renters. They disconnected security systems I installed. They exposed me to liability with uninsured commercial activity on my property. You always were dramatic, Melissa muttered. This is why we didn't ask first. The dinner deteriorated from there, with childhood patterns emerging in full force. My parents had always expected me to be the bigger person and help out my sisters. Once again, they were minimizing serious misconduct to maintain their image of family harmony, regardless of who got hurt in the process. Jennifer, a mutual friend since college, offered to mediate a more productive conversation the following week. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, where everyone could speak freely. My hope for resolution dissolved when my sisters arrived with their husbands in tow, clearly planning an intimidation strategy. We're here to support our wives, Christopher explained with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Jennifer attempted to establish ground rules, but Tyler interrupted. Let's cut through the nonsense. The property has been generating good income that benefits everyone. Rebecca's being selfish, refusing to share family resources. It's not a family resource, I corrected. It's my property, legally and exclusively. Your grandmother would be ashamed, Amanda added. She believed in family support. Don't weaponize Grandma's memory, I shot back. She believed in respect and honesty too. Christopher leaned forward, voice lowered. Listen, your real estate reputation depends on goodwill. Would be a shame if people heard you turned against your own family over vacation property you barely use. The threat hung in the air as Jennifer unsuccessfully tried redirecting the conversation. Within 15 minutes, it was clear no productive dialogue could happen. After they left, Jennifer squeezed my hand. I've never seen them like that. This isn't normal family disagreement, Becca. This feels dangerous. Her words proved prophetic as communications deteriorated further. Amanda sent lengthy emails detailing financial hardships, including her daughter's need for tutoring they couldn't afford. Melissa's texts became increasingly manipulative. Remember when I stayed with you after your breakup with Daniel? Family supports each other through hard times. Now we need support. I consulted Nathan, a real estate attorney friend, bringing documentation of the unauthorized rentals and identity misuse. His expression grew increasingly grave as he reviewed the evidence. Rebecca, this is serious, he explained. Beyond the civil matter of misappropriating your property and rental income, there are potential criminal implications here. Identity theft, fraud, tax evasion, since I'm guessing they didn't report this income. What are my options? I asked. You have several routes. Civilly, you can sue for all rental income plus damages. Criminally, you could file police reports regarding the identity theft and fraud aspects. There's also the tax angle. The IRS would be very interested in unreported income, and as the property owner, you could potentially face liability for rental activity that occurred without proper licensing or tax reporting. I rubbed my temples. I never wanted this to become legal warfare against my own sisters. I understand, Nathan said gently, but they've placed you in a vulnerable position legally. At minimum, you need documentation showing you took action once you discovered the unauthorized use. Otherwise, it could appear you tacitly approved it. That afternoon, I hired Nathan to send a formal cease and desist letter to both sisters and their husbands. The letter detailed the unauthorized use of my property, demanded immediate removal of all rental listings, required full financial accounting of all transactions, and insisted on complete repayment of all rental income within 30 days. Meanwhile, I took immediate security measures. I hired a locksmith to change all locks and security codes. I installed a comprehensive security system with motion sensors, glass break detectors, and cameras covering all entry points, with alerts sent directly to my phone. I thoroughly documented the property's condition with dated photos and video, creating a record of its current state. I also filed an initial police report with Officer Olivia Parker, explaining the situation and my concerns about potential retaliation. We can't take action on the unauthorized rentals without more evidence, she explained, but we can document your concerns and establish a record in case things escalate. That night, alone in my apartment, I struggled with waves of conflicting emotions. These were my sisters. We shared childhood memories, family history, DNA. Yet they had calculated and executed a scheme that violated my trust completely, then showed zero remorse when discovered. I wondered if our relationship had always been this transactional without my realizing it. The family loyalty I'd been raised to value above all else now felt like a weapon being used against me, demanding I sacrifice my own interests to maintain a peace that only served others. The cease and desist letters were delivered on Thursday. By Saturday afternoon, I was in a client meeting when my phone buzzed repeatedly with security alerts from the lake house. Excusing myself, I checked the notifications to find motion detected on the driveway camera. Christopher's black pickup truck was clearly visible, parked haphazardly near the front door. Switching to the front door camera, I watched in disbelief as Christopher and Tyler circled the property, peering into windows. Tyler tried the front door, finding it locked, then moved to check the back entrance. I immediately called the local police department, explaining the situation and requesting immediate assistance. While still on the phone with the dispatcher, I watched through the security feed as Christopher used a rock to break the side window. My heart pounded as both men climbed through, disappearing from camera view. I ended the call with police and immediately began the 90-minute drive to the property, continuing to monitor security alerts showing movement throughout the house. The system's audio recording captured their conversation as they moved through rooms. "Get the new TV first," Christopher directed. "And the sound system. We paid for those with the rental money." "What about the couch?" Tyler asked. "Too big. Focus on electronics, the new kitchenware, and anything valuable we added. She doesn't deserve to keep things we paid for." I listened in horror as they systematically went through my home, discussing what to take as if conducting a legitimate inventory rather than a break-in. They mentioned the new mattresses in the guest rooms, the expensive coffee maker in the kitchen, and the smart thermostats they'd installed without my knowledge. "Don't forget the artwork in the hallway," Melissa's voice suddenly added, apparently on speakerphone. "Those prints cost nearly $500. I hadn't even realized they'd replaced the family photos that previously hung there, photographs of my grandmother that had sentimental value beyond any price tag. My shock transformed into rage as I pushed the speed limit, periodically checking the security feed to watch them disconnecting electronics and carrying items out to the truck. Arriving at the property, I found Christopher and Tyler loading the bed of the pickup with my possessions. A 55-inch smart TV I'd purchased last summer lay wrapped in blankets beside kitchen appliances, table lamps, and decorative items. The broken window gaped open, glass scattered across the porch. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded, staying near my car where I'd just confirmed police were minutes away. Christopher straightened, his expression darkening. "Taking what belongs to us. Everything here was purchased with rental income from our business." "Your business?" I repeated incredulously. "This is my house that you broke into after receiving legal notice to cease all activities related to my property. We invested thousands improving this place," Tyler countered, continuing to load items into the truck. "You can't just cut us out and keep everything we paid for." "That's exactly what happens when you fraudulently rent someone's property. You have no legal claim to anything here." Christopher stepped toward me, his voice dropping threateningly. "You really want to play hardball with family? Think carefully about what you're doing. I'm protecting my property from thieves. You broke a window to enter illegally." "We had to," Tyler exclaimed. "You changed the locks without warning after we'd invested in this place for months. After you rented my property without permission for months," I corrected. "Everything you did was unauthorized from the beginning." Christopher moved closer. "You've always been the princess, haven't you? Grandma's favorite. Mom and Dad's successful daughter. You could have shared, but you chose to be selfish." "Step back," I warned, holding my ground despite my racing heart. "Or what?" he challenged. "You'll call the police on family? Go ahead and tear everyone apart over stuff. Your reputation in this family will never recover." "My reputation?" I laughed bitterly. "You're breaking and entering, and I'm the one damaging relationships?" "We'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are," Tyler added. "Your clients might be interested to know how you treat your own flesh and blood." The unmistakable sound of police sirens interrupted whatever threat might have followed. 2 patrol cars pulled into the driveway, Officer Olivia Parker emerging from the first one. "What's happening here?" she asked, taking in the broken window, half-loaded truck, and obvious tension. "These men broke into my property and are removing items without permission," I stated firmly. "We're removing items we purchased," Christopher countered. "She locked us out after we invested thousands in improvements." Officer Parker requested identification from everyone while her partner documented the scene, photographing the broken window and items in the truck. I provided proof of ownership documents I'd brought along with the cease and desist letter copies. "Here's the situation," Officer Parker finally explained. "This property legally belongs to Ms. Wilson. Regardless of any dispute about items purchased, breaking a window to enter constitutes breaking and entering. Additionally, removing items from someone else's property without legal authorization is attempted theft." "That's ridiculous," Tyler protested. "These are our things. If you have receipts proving purchase, that's a civil matter to be resolved in court," she continued calmly. "But the method you've chosen to retrieve these items is criminal." After 30 tense minutes, both men were handcuffed and placed in separate patrol cars. I provided a formal statement detailing the unauthorized rental scheme, the cease and desist letters, and the security footage showing the break-in. Officer Parker assured me they would face charges for breaking and entering, plus attempted theft. Once the police departed with Christopher and Tyler in custody, I surveyed the damage alone. Beyond the broken window, they damaged the door frame by forcing entry through the back door before resorting to the window. The wall where they'd removed the mounted TV had large holes from carelessly ripping out the brackets. Drawers hung open throughout the house, their contents disarranged during the hasty search for items to claim. Standing in the kitchen, surrounded by evidence of violation, the emotional dam finally broke. I sank to the floor, sobbing with a mixture of grief, rage, and exhaustion. This house that had always represented peace and safety now felt tainted by betrayal. The family relationships I'd valued despite their flaws now lay in ruins, with no clear path to reconstruction. I spent that night at the lake house, sleeping fitfully after temporarily securing the broken window with plywood. The next morning brought multiple missed calls from my parents, who had been notified about their sons-in-law's arrests. Their voicemails expressed shock but quickly pivoted to pleas for me to fix this situation by dropping charges. They made a mistake, Dad insisted in his message. But involving police has escalated this beyond what's necessary. Please, Rebecca, think about what this is doing to the family. Mom's message was equally dismissive of the severity. Your sisters are devastated. Surely there's a better way to resolve this than legal charges. We raised you girls to work things out within the family. Their continued pressure to prioritize a false peace over actual justice became my clarity moment. After years of accommodating family expectations at my own expense, I realized this situation demanded a different response. My sisters and their husbands had calculated that family ties would shield them from consequences. They were wrong. I called my parents back with a clear message. I understand you're upset, but Christopher and Tyler broke into my home and attempted to steal from me. I will not be dropping any charges. If you want to discuss this further, you need to recognize the severity of what they've done instead of asking me to ignore criminal behavior. When Mom began to protest, I continued firmly. This is my final decision. I hope eventually you'll understand why this was necessary. Then I ended the call, turning my attention to the repairs and legal process ahead. The Monday following the break-in, I met with a district attorney assigned to the case, bringing all evidence of both the unauthorized rental scheme and the break-in. The security footage proved particularly compelling, clearly showing Christopher and Tyler breaking the window and discussing their intent to remove items they claimed ownership of. Based on the evidence you've provided, we have solid grounds for pursuing charges, the DA explained. Breaking and entering is clear from the footage. The attempted theft is also well documented by their own recorded conversations and the items already loaded in the truck. What about the fraudulent rental scheme? I asked. That's more complex. The identity issue, using a variation of your name and email, potentially constitutes identity fraud. The unauthorized use of your property for financial gain could be prosecuted as fraud or theft of services. However, family relationships sometimes complicate these cases. I provided additional evidence, screenshots of all rental listings, booking calendars showing transaction history, and communications from renters who believed they were dealing with me. The DA added these to the case file, explaining they would consider additional charges after review. Meanwhile, my sisters seemed shocked that actual consequences had materialized. They'd apparently believed the legal threats were simply negotiation tactics. Amanda called repeatedly, leaving increasingly panicked voicemails about Christopher being processed like a common criminal and how this would destroy his professional reputation. Melissa sent a barrage of texts alternating between guilt trips and outright threats. Do you realize what you've done to our family? Followed by, you'll regret taking this public when we're finished telling people what you're really like. I forwarded these communications to Nathan, who advised documenting everything but not engaging directly. We're proceeding with a civil lawsuit, he confirmed. I've prepared the paperwork claiming all rental income, property damages, and additional punitive damages for the intentional nature of their actions. The discovery phase of the civil case revealed even more extensive property damage than I'd initially realized. I hired a professional property inspector who documented approximately $8,500 in damages beyond the broken window and wall. Water damage from improper use of the hot tub they'd purchased without proper installation, scratched hardwood floors from moving furniture, a damaged boat dock where renters had repeatedly hit it while attempting to park watercraft, and a septic system requiring expensive repairs due to overuse beyond its residential capacity. The inspector also documented unauthorized modifications to the property. Removed walls between two smaller bedrooms to create a master suite, replaced original bathroom fixtures with modern ones, and removed built-in bookshelves my grandmother had cherished to create space for a larger television. I consulted a tax specialist about potential liabilities from the unreported rental income. As the property owner, you could face penalties if the IRS discovers commercial activity occurred without proper reporting, she explained. I recommend filing amended returns disclosing the situation, showing you received no income personally and are pursuing recovery through legal channels. This created another layer of stress and paperwork, requiring me to document a fraud situation to protect myself from tax implications of money I never received from activities I never authorized. As legal proceedings advanced, my sisters launched what felt like a coordinated harassment campaign. Amanda called several of my clients, claiming to warn them about unethical business practices. Melissa posted vague but damaging social media comments about successful family members who build careers while stepping on relatives. Most disturbingly, they contacted my brokerage's ethics board with false allegations about commingling client funds, a serious accusation requiring formal investigation. Though ultimately dismissed as baseless, the investigation created professional stress during an already difficult period. Extended family members began taking sides after receiving one-sided accounts from my sisters. Aunt Caroline called to express disappointment in my decisions. Cousin Rachel sent a lengthy email about the importance of forgiveness in family. Uncle Robert was the rare exception, calling to say, "I heard what happened. Those girls always did think the rules didn't apply to them. You're right to stand your ground." My parents continued their campaign for reconciliation without accountability, organizing a family meeting I declined to attend and sending increasingly manipulative messages about healing the family divide without addressing the actual wrongdoing. When these tactics failed, Dad resorted to reminding me they were getting older and might not have many years left to see their daughters united. The pressure became so intense that I finally filed for restraining orders against both sisters and their husbands, using their threatening communications and harassment of my professional contacts as evidence. The judge granted temporary orders pending a hearing, providing much-needed breathing room from their constant contact attempts. During this period, I began seeing a therapist to process the complex emotions surrounding the situation. Dr. Morgan helped me recognize the childhood patterns that had set the stage for this conflict. My parents consistently expecting me to accommodate my sisters' needs while rarely holding them accountable for their actions. "You're not destroying the family by holding boundaries," Dr. Morgan assured me during one particularly difficult session. "The family dynamic was already unhealthy. Your refusal to continue participating in it just exposed what was already there." These insights helped me weather the emotional storm as legal proceedings continued. Support emerged from unexpected sources. Work colleagues who witnessed the stress I was under, Gregory and other neighbors who provided witness statements about the unauthorized rentals, even former clients who reached out after hearing rumors to express continued confidence in my integrity. Jennifer, whose mediation attempt had failed so spectacularly, became a regular source of support, often bringing dinner when I worked late preparing documentation for the cases. "I always thought your sisters were just a bit entitled," she admitted one evening. "I never realized they would go this far." "Neither did I confessed. "That's the hardest part, realizing I never really knew them." As weeks turned to months, the criminal and civil cases slowly progressed through the legal system. Each filing, hearing, and deposition required emotional energy and time away from my business, creating yet another cost beyond the financial ones. Yet with each step, I felt more certain that seeing this through was necessary, not just to recover losses, but to establish that family relationships couldn't be used as shields for exploitation. 6 months after the break-in, both legal matters finally approached resolution. The criminal case concluded first, with Christopher and Tyler accepting plea deals rather than risking trial. Each pleaded guilty to reduced charges of criminal trespassing and attempted theft, receiving sentences of 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and court-ordered restitution for property damage from the break-in. "It's a reasonable outcome," the DA explained when I questioned the leniency. "Neither has prior criminal records, and the plea saves court resources while still establishing consequences. The restitution order gives you immediate financial recovery for the physical damages." The civil judgment followed 3 weeks later after a preliminary hearing where the judge reviewed the extensive evidence. His comments during proceedings spoke directly to the heart of the matter. Family relationships create obligations of trust that, when violated, deserve special consideration. The defendants exploited family access and knowledge for financial gain, then responded to discovery with intimidation rather than accountability. The final judgment awarded me the full $24,000 in documented rental income, plus approximately $12,000 for property damages beyond the broken window, and an additional $10,000 in punitive damages, a total exceeding $46,000. The judge's written opinion specifically cited the calculated nature of the scheme and subsequent attempts to intimidate the plaintiff as justification for the punitive amount. Victory felt hollow, however, when both sisters immediately filed for bankruptcy protection, attempting to discharge the judgment. Nathan filed objections, arguing that debts arising from intentional wrongdoing couldn't be discharged through bankruptcy. After another hearing, the court established payment plans requiring monthly payments over 5 years, regardless of bankruptcy status. With legal matters settled but emotional wounds still raw, I turned my attention to reclaiming the lake house. The broken window and wall damage had been repaired immediately after the break-in, but deeper restoration was necessary to remove the negative associations that had accumulated. I hired professional cleaners for a complete deep cleaning, removing all traces of unauthorized renters and family betrayal. I replaced the mattresses, linens, and kitchenware they had purchased with new items chosen specifically for my own taste and comfort. Most importantly, I restored the family photographs they had removed, returning my grandmother's smiling face to the walls where it belonged. The most significant change came in the form of a comprehensive security upgrade, a system with tamper alerts, backup power supply, and remote monitoring through a security service rather than just my personal phone. I also engaged a property attorney to create legal documentation, clearly establishing ownership boundaries and explicitly prohibiting anyone from representing themselves as authorized to use or rent the property. The first weekend I spent at the lake house after these changes became a personal ritual of reclamation. I walked each room, acknowledging what had happened there, but refusing to let it define the space moving forward. I sat on the deck watching sunset colors reflect on the water, gradually feeling the peace this place had always provided begin to return. Therapy continued to be crucial during this period, helping me process the complicated grief of family relationships fundamentally altered. "You haven't lost family," Dr. Morgan suggested during one session. "You've lost the illusion of what you thought that family was. Now you're seeing clearly, which is painful but ultimately healthier." This perspective helped as I established new boundaries with my parents, who eventually realized I would not budge on accountability requirements. Our interactions became limited to occasional phone calls where we carefully avoided discussing my sisters, focusing instead on neutral topics like their garden or my father's woodworking projects. Holiday gatherings required careful planning with clear guidelines. I would attend only if certain behavioral expectations were met by everyone present. As for the lake house itself, I faced a decision about its future. After much consideration, I reached out to Sarah Johnson, owner of a legitimate property management company specializing in luxury vacation rentals. With her guidance, I properly licensed and insured the property for commercial use, established appropriate tax reporting mechanisms, and created a legal rental structure that protected both my ownership interests and guest experiences. Ironically, the house did become a successful rental property, but on my terms, with proper legal protections, fair management fees, and complete transparency. Sarah's company handled all aspects of rental management for a standard 15% commission, providing detailed monthly reports and setting aside appropriate reserves for maintenance and taxes. The first official rental weekend brought a sense of reclaimed agency. A family with 3 children enjoyed the property, leaving a glowing review about the peaceful lakefront experience and thoughtful amenities. Their rental generated legitimate income that appeared on proper tax forms, with appropriate percentages allocated for future maintenance and improvements. Most healing of all was the realization that my grandmother's legacy remained intact despite everything that had transpired. The property she had loved and entrusted to me continued to provide joy, not just to me, but now to others who appreciated its beauty through proper channels that respected both ownership and responsibility. 1 year after discovering my sister's unauthorized rental scheme, I returned to the lake house for a personal weekend retreat. The property had transformed both physically and emotionally. New landscaping softened the approach to the house, while interior updates reflected my personal style rather than rental-focused generic decor. More importantly, the emotional atmosphere had shifted from violation back to sanctuary. My relationship with my family had found a new equilibrium, distant but civil. Contact with my sisters remained limited to holiday cards containing brief, polite messages with no mention of past events. My parents had gradually accepted these boundaries, though occasional comments suggested they still hoped for eventual, full reconciliation, without fully acknowledging what that would require. The experience had revealed generational patterns I'd never fully recognized before. My grandmother had protected me from much of the family dynamic, but in her absence, I saw clearly how my parents had always enabled my sister's sense of entitlement. Their constant messaging that family helps family had created a one-way expectation where my success obligated me to subsidize my sister's financial irresponsibility. This recognition transformed my approach to all relationships. I became more attentive to early warning signs of entitlement or boundary violations. In business, I found myself setting clearer expectations with clients and colleagues, no longer fearing that boundaries would damage relationships. Surprisingly, this clarity actually improved my professional interactions. When a high-maintenance client attempted to repeatedly schedule meetings outside my established work hours, I calmly explained my boundaries instead of accommodating demands as I once might have. Rather than losing the business, the client adjusted to my parameters and ultimately commented on the refreshing professionalism of our working relationship. Financially, the lake house had come full circle. The legitimate rental income not only covered all maintenance costs, but generated enough to repay legal expenses within the first year. Property values in the area increased substantially, making my grandmother's gift even more valuable than when she'd bestowed it. I established strict financial boundaries in all relationships, creating clear agreements before lending money or sharing resources. The question of forgiveness versus reconciliation became central to my healing process. Through therapy, I recognized these as separate concepts. I could forgive my sisters for my own peace without resuming relationships that had proven toxic. Forgiveness didn't require forgetting or vulnerability to repeated harm. It simply meant releasing the daily anger that had initially consumed me. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself, Dr. Morgan had explained. Reconciliation requires changed behavior from those who caused harm. Without that change, reconciliation just enables further damage. This distinction allowed me to move forward without the weight of constant resentment while maintaining necessary protective boundaries. I redirected energy previously spent managing difficult family dynamics toward building healthier connections. The experience transformed me into an unexpected mentor for younger colleagues facing their own boundary challenges. During a team retreat, I shared elements of my experience, emphasizing the importance of establishing clear expectations in all relationships. Several team members later sought private conversations about their own family or client boundary struggles, finding validation in my willingness to discuss these difficult topics. I even spoke at a real estate association seminar about property security and fraud prevention, turning my painful experience into valuable lessons for others in my industry. The presentation focused on practical prevention measures rather than personal details, but the authentic understanding behind my recommendations resonated with attendees. New traditions gradually replaced old ones at the lake house. Rather than obligatory family gatherings, I hosted small retreats for friends who had provided genuine support. I joined the Lake Association, contributing to community initiatives that protected the natural environment my grandmother had cherished. Most importantly, I established regular personal retreats dedicated to self-care and reflection, honoring my own needs without apology or explanation. Through this journey, I developed a deeper understanding of what defines true relationships. Blood connections provided no guarantee of respect or care. Actions, not family titles, revealed who genuinely deserved trust. The people who stood beside me during the most difficult period weren't necessarily those with the strongest claims of family obligation. They were those who demonstrated authentic concern for my well-being. This insight led to my most significant personal growth, recognizing that boundaries aren't selfish, but essential expressions of self-respect. By clearly establishing what I would and wouldn't accept in relationships, I created space for connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. As I sit on the deck watching sunset colors transform the lake, I reflect on how something intended to harm me ultimately led to profound healing. The property that became a battleground has reclaimed its identity as a sanctuary, not despite what happened, but because of how those events forced growth and clarity. What would you do if family members betrayed your trust for financial gain? Would you prioritize family peace or personal boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in my story about standing firm when others cross lines, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content about navigating difficult relationship dynamics. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to participate in unhealthy patterns. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to honor your own boundaries, whatever challenges you face.